I noticed in the programs it says that Arturo Toledo is supposed to be speaking today. I am not Arturo Toledo. I am Brian Agnetta. I am also on the design team for Windows Phone, and I've been there for 10 years. And I'm very proud to talk to you about Windows Phone today. And before I get started, do you all have Windows phones? Right, show of hands. All right, this is good. It's a good start. Have you all used a Windows Phone? Raise your hands. Okay. So that means there are people in this room who have not seen or used a Windows Phone. Would anybody like me to demonstrate some features for you? Yes? No? Maybe? Got a couple yeses. All right, I'll do it. I'll do just a little bit, and then I'll get into it. Maybe we'll make a sale today. Who knows? Everybody can see that. So this is upside down. This is a Windows Phone. This is your lock screen, and when you get started, you slide up your lock screen, and it reveals the area that we call live tiles. And you scroll up and down, and you see all your tiles. Over here, here's the rest of your applications. I'm going to be talking to you about applications today. So every application that you build will have a place somewhere in this list. And if it's really good and a user likes it, they'll pin it to their live tile space. And you can notice right here, right where I have Facebook, we have a feature. I'm showing you a feature called deep linking. Every application has the ability to design deep linking into their application. So if I were to hit the Facebook tile, I'll go right into the high-level part of Facebook. And I don't have a connection right now, but that would show you all your feeds. But by deep linking, you can pick special parts of your application that users are going to want to dive into every time. This is places where I would check in. And so it's going to go directly to the part of the application where there's checking in available. Your applications can do that too. Let me show you a couple other fun things. Let's go to Xbox Live. Obviously, we spent a lot of time integrating our partners' brands and products into our software. And there's my avatar, and he's completely interactive. In fact, you can, you're gonna see my pet ranger, by the way. There he is. And he plays around with that. This is also where you find the rest of your games. Right here. I don't have that many games, sorry. Let's go back to my avatar, see if he's still playing with the dog. Now I wanted to show you a feature. If you shake your phone, which mine is not doing, shake, 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 you can make them dance. Sometimes you can make them, all right, dance some more. I bet you on this third time, I can make them fall. And if you keep doing that, he actually gets mad, and he'll stamp the ground, and sometimes that'll crack the screen, or he'll pull that whole panorama over. It's those little moments of delight that are sprinkled through the whole platform, and I'll talk to you guys about how you can do the same thing in my presentation. So, with that, I'm going to get to the presentation. Boom. All right. So I'm going to talk to you today about journeys and advanced application design. But first, I want to tell you a little bit about the Windows Phone journey, which actually started in about 2004, 2005, where myself and a couple of my colleagues were asked by our management to say, think about it all differently. Change everything, if you could. And there was no promises at the time. We didn't know we were going to build anything. But at around that time, through 2004, 2005, through 2006, we started to develop an interaction model, which eventually became Windows Phone 7. Or pieces of it became Windows Phone 7. Around 2009, 2010, we brought in some really high-powered visual designers, and this is where Windows Phone started to jump out as something completely different. And it came out of an awareness of what the industry was doing. We have some great competitors at the time, iPhone, Palm, and BlackBerry. All were doing some great products, But honestly, they all started to look the same. And our initial visual concepts also kind of looked the same. And we said we really needed to do something different. So we came up with a design language called Metro. And Metro is based off of clean typographic and visual design principles. And its origins are based off of wayfinding and signage. And so we thought to ourselves, if we're going to build a smartphone, and smartphones are going to get increasingly complicated, what might we make an analogy to or a comparison to that would be a good metaphor for our phone? And we thought about travelers traveling all over the world, and how no matter where you go, whether you speak the language or not, people seem to find their way pretty well through the airport and to their hotel and around town. And we said, man, if strong typographic and visual design language can get a person through a city that they've never been to, then perhaps that will also be something that we can use to get a user to pick up their phone and know intuitively how it's going to work. And honestly, a lot of these examples are really beautiful. And so we thought, well, maybe our phone can be really beautiful too by focusing on some typographic principles. And so for months and months and months, we started around January and it was around March, we put a 70-person visual design team on iterating. All of these examples are but a small sample of what our team produced as we were trying to figure out what Windows Phone would look like. The investment was huge, and it's the same investment that you guys are going to have to make when you're building your applications and you're thinking about the design of your applications. Now, we didn't do any of these, I don't believe. There's some that look similar. But if any one of your applications start to look like this, that's okay. Guess what? That's Metro. All of these are Metro. Metro is just a clean, clear, typographic design language. So that's the first takeaway. Metro doesn't mean you have to look exactly like Windows Phone native applications. You can make Metro look any way you want it to look. But it takes some practice and some principles. So Metro is our design language. We call it Metro because it's modern and clean, it's fast and in motion. It's about content and typography, and it's entirely authentic. This is something we repeat almost every day in the studio. The bottom sentence, the last sentence, and it's entirely authentic, is one of the most important sentences in that whole slide there. And it actually used to say, it's entirely digitally authentic. And when this slide first got published, there was, I think, a blogger on Gizmodo, I forget, but he said, every time I read that sentence, it makes me want to barf rainbow pixels. It sounds funny, but it's something that we take very personally. When I talk to you about being typographic focused and using visual design principles to make your phone look beautiful, it's important to us because it's a really small screen. And if you start decorating it with objects that appear 3D or that are simply acting as frames or chrome, then suddenly you're taking away from the content that the user was there to see. It's a flat, sometimes 3-inch diagonal screen. If you put those objects, those bevels, those pieces of chrome into your UI, then you're starting to take up space that the content really wanted. And so by being digitally authentic, we said, you know what? We're not going to put anything in our UI that doesn't belong there or cannot naturally live there. So it's Metro style that makes us different. And for a moment, I'll talk to you really quickly about Metro and its growth throughout Microsoft. We have Xbox, Windows Phone, and soon Windows 8. And we are all applying Metro to our products. And there will be more products with Metro style baked into them. The thing about it, it's one common design language, but that does not mean that you can design once for Xbox and then immediately push, or stretch, or shrink your UI and have it fit on a Windows Phone. Metro, being typographic, needs to embrace the space that it's in and not to do something that it was not meant to be in any one of the other spaces. So as you make your great Xbox app, and you make your great Windows Phone app, and you make your great Windows 8 app, you're going to have to take a step back in each one and say, hey, what is the right thing to present on this new screen real estate or this less smaller screen real estate that I am now confronted with? And you're going to make some changes. Perhaps you will elevate some things, or perhaps you'll hide some things. But it's important to reconsider your UI as you move through each of these platforms. So integration is the other differentiator across all these products. Windows Phone, back when it came out, was the first and best time that Microsoft has ever placed all of its brands onto one product and they look like they belonged there. Normally it looked like brand soup when we do this, but it actually looks pretty delightful the way we did it, and we're pretty proud. And that's the same thing that's going to happen across all of our other products. And so that's a big thing for a Microsoft product, but really the integration that we care about is the integration with you when you're building your applications. We want you to fit in with us, and we'll help you do that. And everybody will look great when we do this. The example on the right is, again, another goal that you guys can aspire to, which is the ability to integrate with the user's lifestyle. This is an example of what the Windows Phone Pictures application looks like. If we were Microsoft of about 5-7 years ago, our Photos application would have been a folder that said Pictures, and then a whole bunch of icons that went down with gobbledygook names, and they were all like photo icons, and that's how we would have displayed photos to you. But we took a step back and we said, if we want to build a phone that people will love and integrate into their life, we need to have our Photos application to be used the way they use photos. And so for us, that meant sharing, showing off, and remembering. So as soon as you go into this application, if you see your kid or if you see the activity that you were participating in, and you're like, wow, I remember that, what a great time, and you turn your phone around and you show it to somebody, well then you've built a great Photos app. And we think we have, because we have the ability for you to remember some of your favorite photos and see what your friends are saying about their photos. These are all things that you can do in your applications as well. So now we're going to get into the meat of it. Advanced application design. I'm going to talk a little bit about the basics of Windows Phone and some of its controls and designing for Metro. Then I'll go into a design-driven process, and then I'll talk to you about taking it to the next level. If you guys were to go to MSDN and download our guidelines, you'll see a whole bunch of things, and it says, here's what you can do, here's what you can't do, don't be larger than this, don't be smaller than that. And after you read those design guidelines, the one impression you get, in fact, after you read any design guideline, the one impression you get is that you were just told all the things you can't do. I can't think of a way to write design guidelines which would say, and here's the infinite things that you can do. But the idea is that we write them so that people can fit in, but we're not saying don't do other things. And I'm going to talk to you about some fun things that you can do on Windows Phone that are not specified in design guidelines and that will never prevent you from doing, because it's creative and it's innovative. And finally, I'll walk you through a use case of applying it. So, refreshing the basics. I'm going to talk to you about Metro principles. I'll go quickly through system navigation and hierarchy, talk to you about page structures, controls, tools, and other building blocks. So, Metro principles. As I said, we're typographic based. That's where we drew our inspiration. First and foremost, one of our principles is pride and craftsmanship across Xbox, Windows Phone, and Windows 8. We all agree that one thing that we will all embrace is pride and craftsmanship. We care so much about that when I'm at my day job in Redmond, I have a team of 30 front-end developers whose job is to make the design vision realize in code. And so if the designer says that something is 24 pixels from the left margin, you can believe it will be there. If it's 25 pixels, it's a bug. And my guys go fix that. If it's 23 pixels, it's a bug. Think about that. We have at the bottom of the screen, or across the screen, that's 480 pixels. If we are at 23 pixels, that's 1 pixel out of 480. We will fix that bug, because we want to look perfect. And that's the same as in Windows 8, and that's the same as in Xbox. Now, the other thing about Windows Phone is that if you take any screenshot, it looks kind of flat, and that's by design. But when you're looking at press releases or things on the web, it looks like a screenshot, and that's it. It doesn't look like there's life, as you might see in an Apple product or an Android product. It doesn't look like there's some 3D elements there. But what we do, which is delightful, is that anytime you navigate, and I'll show you this a little later, you get a really, really alive motion, and it responds immediately. Every time you touch something, that object wiggles a little bit, and it looks like it's a living object, and it responds immediately. So we are fast and in motion, and that's how we combine a typographic language with our motion to give you a product that feels like your own little buddy. Authentically digital, we talked about. We don't put objects on our screen that naturally cannot be there. And we do more with less. I've talked to you about that as well. Our competitors, and even we, used to have chrome elements of perhaps glass or brushed aluminum that would frame the screen. And if we wanted you to touch something, we actually built a button and it looked like a plastic or a piece of glass and it said press here, and you'd press that and it would go down. All of those sort of elements distract from the content. A user opens up an application, perhaps it's for contacts, and they want to see their friends or their friends' pictures. Honestly, they don't want to see the Chrome. They are there to see their friends. So we started ripping out every single piece of Chrome and giving that space back to their friends. And what we found is that we started to create very beautiful applications. I was just doing the same presentation in Palo Alto a week ago, and there was a vendor there who was talking about this principle of do more with less. And he did something which I thought was just genius. He took an application, I can't remember which one it was, we'll say it's Foursquare. It probably wasn't. And he said, this is what Foursquare looks like on iPhone, and this is what Foursquare looks like on Android, and this is what Foursquare looks like on Windows Phone. And he said, now if I remove the Chrome from Apple and Android and Windows Phone and show you what's left, and he did this, he stripped out all the Chrome, it ended up being, if the Apple screen was this big, there was that much content on the screen. Same thing for Android. If you ripped out the Chrome, there was that much screen, that much content that the user came to. When you came to Windows Phone, boom, it was all there. Everything the user wanted to be there was there, and which is really empowering, which is really amazing to be demonstrated that way. One day I will create the same slide. Finally, Win as one. This is one that I hope that you guys embrace as well. Across Windows Phone, Xbox, and Windows, we all said, hey, look, we are all in. We're going to make design languages that look like they belong from the same family. And we're going to create a set of controls that look like they belong from the same family. Now, when you guys build, we need you to do the same thing. The idea here is that we have a set of controls and we have a set of design principles that have worked throughout the whole platform. It's 800-something screens in total. So they work through the whole platform. And a user goes and buys a phone and they use it and they say, all right, I get it. And then you build an application. And hopefully when you build your application, you'll apply the same navigation models and the same controls. That way when the user goes into the app, they'll go, oh yeah, they're doing exactly like the platform. I get it. But if you do something different, if you say, you know what, all that Windows Phone stuff, it's not working for me, my app is special. So I'm going to build my special app. I'm going to do something completely different. When a user gets into your app, and we've seen this, they go, oh, wait a minute, what's going on here? They have to relearn. And so you don't want users to relearn everything they just spent time doing on the platform. And the reason is because they'll think your application is harder to use. And then they'll come into the platform and they'll go, now wait a minute, now is what they said what I should be doing? And so consequently, it's going to make our platform seem a little different, and they'll have to reconsider everything they've already learned. So by winning as one, we're all in it together. We're all saying, okay, we get it. That, again, does not mean you cannot innovate. There's lots of controls. We're not telling you how to put them together. We're not telling you which controls to use. We're just saying, here's as many as we can come up with. Here's how we assemble them. If you follow these patterns, you'll come up with some great things as well. So that's win as one. That's possibly the most important principle. I got into this a little bit, but I'll talk through it again. Windows Phone is on the right, iPhone is on the top, Android's on the bottom. All beautiful platforms, all doing great things. This slide is not to say that we are better than them or they are better than us. What I'm saying is we're different. And so when you're building with us or for us or on us, what we want you to understand is the app that you would have built for iPhone or Android is not the app that you would build for Windows Phone, because we're winning as one. We're winning together. Now, the difference is that our competitors, iPhone and Android, are iconographic. They use real-world tools and objects as their metaphors, like that clock. They actually built a clock with all its bevels and pieces of aluminum and the hands. The hands are a little bit forward of the face, and they tick in the whole bit. That's great. Looks like a clock. Good job, Android. On the top, if you look at iPhone, all of those tiles, or their applications, they look like little buttons. They put a little bend in them, and they put a highlight on top. And they're trying to say, we're going to design these things to look like buttons so people know to press them. Okay, that's a great approach. What we said is that it's a touch screen. What do users do with touch screens if not touch? It's called a touch screen. So everything is touchable. We made the assumption that if it's on the screen, it's touchable. And so we didn't have to design in things like arrows and bevels that say, touch me, please. What we did is just said the user is going to know to touch the screen and interact with it, and everything will be interactable. And so that means that every single space on the screen has more opportunity to be what it is. So infographic designs, the content is represented as it exists. So if there is a tile with me, my contact, it'll be my picture, rather than a picture of an address book. It's me. I get to see my face on my phone. Or in email, I get to tell you how many emails I've gotten. Or in music, I get to show you the band rather than a square with a note on it. That's what infographic is. You get to present information as it exists. And we think what ends up happening there as you use infographic style languages and you embrace infographic style languages, what users can then do with that home screen is they can configure things. They can move elements to the top and move elements to the bottom and then change the color. And suddenly, the phone and the information presented on it becomes a mirror of that user's personality. So for all of us people who have Windows phones, if we lined up our phones on the ground here and we were to take a look at them, they'd all look a little different because each one is expressing the values and the content that is most important to each of the users. Whereas I contend that if you look at the Android and iPhones, if we did the same thing, eventually they all look the same because they're a bunch of tiles, just tile, 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 or little chiclets, if you will. So we have the ability using this design language to really allow users to express themselves. System navigation. Windows Phone is a hub and spokes model. You start at start, and you start drilling in. And when you come back out, you hit back, 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 back. Or you hit start again, and we'll always take you home. Your application should do the same thing. As you build, please trust the hardware. Start always takes you to the start. Back always takes you one screen. You don't have to use back buttons, and you don't have to use home buttons. Actually, you can. I'll get into that. You don't have to use back buttons. We've already given it to you. And so, again, just like we've built controls in the software, the hardware has a lot of navigational elements already baked into it that you can trust to move the user in and out of their application. I mentioned home buttons and putting in back buttons into your UI. If you do those things, a lot of times what happens is that as a user moves in, and if they use your back button or they use your home button, they can actually get themselves into a recursive loop in their UI. What I would do is just simply say, before you build, spread out your UI onto huge pieces of paper or whiteboards, and then plan for what your back buttons do, or our back button does, and your home buttons do, and you won't get into recursive loops and phantom pieces of UI. Be predictable. I've already gone into this. What I mean by this is if the system has done it in a certain way, you should try and do it in the same certain way. Don't reinvent the wheel. That predictability will make your app stronger. And finally, opportunity. Most platforms simply give you a place to launch your application, the front screen. We do that, and we enable you to put your content into some great places in our UI. So, for instance, if you build a photo sharing application and you go into Photos, your application can be launched there. If you build a music sharing application and you go into our music and videos experience, your application can be launched there. If you do a search for pizza from Bing and you built a location-aware application, you'll eventually find your application in the exact same steps that the user went to find that restaurant. Where the system will know, hey, you know what? There's an application that can do that for you, and it's right here, and that could be your app. All of those things are opportunities that you can take advantage of as you design your applications. Okay, now a little bit about visual design. The thing about Metro is that it's highly curated. I told you about my team of 30 people who move things 1 pixel out of 480. It's pretty important to us. Visual design and typographic design language and all the signs that you'll see all around here embrace a certain set of principles that essentially mean hierarchy is achieved by playing with size and a little bit of color. And that's it. We don't use indentations and we don't use arrows to draw attention to things. It's size and color. So when you do this, you get a very, very clean layout. And so what you want to do on every screen is essentially prioritize. Don't do too much. This isn't Windows Phone 6 or 5 or 4 or whatever it is, where we tried to put as much on the screen as possible because our customers and our clients said, it's a mobile device and people are on the go and they're going to want to see everything on that screen all at once, and that'll make them more efficient. What we found is that on those screens, users would stare at them and go, huh? And they would stare and then eventually figure it out. But by opening things up and having clear priority and clear typographic principles embraced, then users were like, yep, that's exactly what I want to see, and they would move on with their tasks. Keep the user oriented. Order your data in a logical way, and restrain the number of pivots. The top of there, oh, I have a laser. This is a pivot. Restrain the number of pivots or panes in a panorama. If you have more than, say, 5, 6, or 7, then suddenly the user will have a difficult time remembering where they are in the system. So you have to show a little bit of restraint. Now, Metro, being such a curated language, has this artifact that goes on with it. People look at it and say, wow, that looks really simple. I can do that, which is great. But you have to practice it. Because what we would do, actually what I would have done maybe 3 or 4 years ago if I were designing this screen, I might have indented this a little bit and maybe indented this a little bit just to make sure that people knew that this is different from this, and I wanted to show some hierarchy, so I would indent and all those sorts of things. And if you look at this, it's all text, and that's what you do with text, right? Well, what ends up happening if you do that indentation and things like that, you start to create invisible visual artifacts. So if this were indented, there would be a space right here, right there, that would not be filled with anything, but your eye would still track towards. Your eye will still stop there and go, wait a minute, what's going on? There's a visual element over there. So every time you sort of tease away at a very practiced piece of UI, it creates a visual element that your eye is momentarily attracted to. And that creates a moment of a user processing and a user thinking. And what you want to do is essentially take that moment away from the user and take the opportunity, the extra time, to make your UI look as simple as possible. What happened? Oh, I know what happened there. Hit the wrong button. Okay. So how do we get away from that? What we do is we lay down a grid. And on every screen, as the designers are going through, they plop this grid right down on it, and they line everything up in certain ways. So I mentioned to you about a 24-pixel margin earlier. That's our 24-pixel margin. Beep-boop-bop, all the way down. And everything lines up with that. If this D were over here, it creates that visual space. And honestly, it looks bad. The content usually aligns to one of these horizontals. And so what I recommend is one of two things. Use the grid. You can get it off of MSDN. Put your content onto it. Then adjust a little bit if you need to come just a little bit off the grid. That's okay. That's what we do too. But the easiest thing in the world to do, and it's not cheating, is to use native apps as a guide. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. We're a platform where there are something on the order of 800 screens. I bet you that within those 800 screens, you will find an example of a screen that represents exactly the layout you want to do. So grab that screen from the emulator, hit copy it, then put your UI down right next to it, build that, make it look exactly as close as possible, and you say, all right, great, now I understand how Metro would have done it. Then inject your brand, inject your visual distinctiveness, whether it be a little bit of color or whatever it is, make it look like you would have done it. It's the layout that we care about that makes things simple, and that's the best way to start practicing that is by copying what we do. Okay. Whole bunch of tools. On the right, the Windows Phone Developer blog. I'm actually showing a screenshot of where the design team blogs to. I think I have the link at the end. If I don't, I'll get it for you. You can come up to me afterwards. And on the left is App Hub. That's where all of the design guidelines and code samples from developers and designers are all located. And again, the phone is your best template, so use that. Okay, design-driven process, going from think to make and creating a user journey. So whether we're in advanced design or basic application design, the thing that I'm going to tell you today that makes great applications is planning up front. Microsoft has great tools, Blend, Visual Studio, all those things, and the design language looks simple, so it's really, really tempting to just jump into the code and start coding away and getting your application up and running as fast as you can. I'm here to tell you, don't jump into the tools. Your best friends ever are a marker and a huge whiteboard, or a marker and the biggest piece of paper you can find. This is planning. So, Metro cannot be engineered. And what I'm trying to talk about is pulling apart the design processes from the engineering processes. Design should happen first, create your plan, and then build to your plan. Design and Metro are a thoughtful exercise. And if you jump right into your code and start coding, what you'll miss are the opportunities for innovation, and you'll also miss the opportunities to get great quality. This curve on the right describes essentially the design process that my team follows at Microsoft, and almost every team does. This define, explore, concept, refine, this is design. And so you might say, I want to build a golf app. And in that define stage, you'll say, and it will do these 5 things for this type of user. And then in the explore stage, you're going to say, how am I going to do that? And you might have your friends together, and you might do a brainstorm, and you might sketch something, and you say, it could look like this, or maybe I can attach my phone to the base of the club, and that can analyze my swing, but that would break your phone. But that's okay, right? That's a crazy idea that might lead you to think, well, maybe the phone just has to be in your pocket with the accelerometer on, and then I can analyze the swing in much the same way. So a bad idea turned into a good idea. But if you jumped right into the code and said, I'm just going to build a golf app that tracks how many strokes it takes me to get to the end of a golf course, then you'd have missed that really crazy idea. So that's what happens in the explore stage. Now, eventually, you got to move on and create a concept. What are you going to build? Put it on paper. You're going to draw, and I'll show you an example, interaction diagrams that'll show you every screen in the UI. And you're going to get some feedback, so then you're going to refine it, and then you build. If you decide to skip this, if you decide, I'm not going to take Brian's advice today, I'm not going to do my planning up front, I'm just going to build. What'll end up happening, and I've seen this 1,000 times, is that the time that you saved from planning will come back over here in bug fixing. In one of my responsibilities at Microsoft, I also review almost every depth partner application that comes in through the platform. That could be Facebook, Twitter, Netflix, you name it. And I see a couple agencies who build for those partners skip this. And first, I can tell when they skipped it right away. I see the app, nothing's aligned, there's no plan, there's no priority. And I go, well, guess what they skipped? But I can also tell the ones that did this, because there's little moments of innovation. there's a movie app on the phone that doesn't just tell you what movies are playing in the local theaters. There's a place on it in the application that says, and if you were to go right now, here are the movies about 5 minutes that are going to start in about 5 to 15 minutes that you can get to given your current location. The second I saw that, I knew that there was an exploration phase where someone said, I don't often plan in the morning to go to the movie. I plan within 5 to 10 minutes. And that was a fantastic insight that this person had. And they only had it because they took some time to design first. Those applications that skip this, they spend their time fixing bugs. And believe me, they don't fix all of them. Okay. I think I might want to go back. Right, so in your refine, commit, and realize, you're going to apply your visual design and motion treatment, fold in the learnings from usability tests if you do them, build it and verify it on the device, fix your bugs, interaction, visual, motion, and functional bugs, all of them. So now you're in your explore phase or your define phase. You want to know who your user is. Could be that golfer. It could be someone who likes to go to the movies. You want to make it personal. You want to make it relevant, and you want to let them be in the present. Can you guys see that? Is this in the way? No, it's not. Here's the challenge right here. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, and we've been standing up, and finally our phones got in our hands, and we could still stand up and talk to all of our friends. And then our phones started to become a little bit smarter than us, and we started bending and bowing down to our phones, and we were stuck in our phone. I don't want you to not draw the user into the phone. That's your value add. When the user's looking down, you win. But what you want them to do is stand up again and share that information with their friends. So we just want to break a little bit of this cycle here. We want this person to stand up and go, see? That's what we want. You want to let them be in the present because you brought them relevant content. The way you do that is you balance or you add to the balance. You do a business viability and technical feasibility exercise. Typically, we want you to include the concept of, are you building a desirable experience? And when you have something desirable, people want to share it. And that's a good way of knowing that you've built something great. So you could just ask yourself, is this thing useful, usable, and desirable? Those are the really hard questions. But when you do that, you'll find users standing up and saying, see, this is the application that I love. Some data that came, I think it was a 2007 study of, might be a little later than that, of iPhone applications. The average application is used once, and 1% of applications are used regularly in the long run. You spent all this time building your application, and it might only be used once. Yikes. Now, there are some applications that get a little bit of a reprieve from that. Sports applications, social networking applications, the content that's put into them naturally updates because the Patriots keep winning and you want to keep going to find that out. Or your soccer team keeps winning and you want to go and find that out. Or your friends keep posting new photos and you want to go and find that out. And so those applications get a little bit of a benefit. But you still need to think a little bit more about what it's going to take to develop a great relationship with your user so that they'll keep coming back and still keep coming back to show off your application to others. So here's your formula. You want your applications to follow this formula: attract, delight, and retain. So when you attract a user to your app, you want to have a strong initial value proposition. You want to embrace the Metro visual style, because we think it's beautiful. And then we want to layer your brand in a beautiful and thoughtful way, because you think your brand is beautiful, and they can live together. Then you want to delight. You don't want to give it all away during the first run. If every single value proposition that you have in your application is either on the tile on the first screen, then that app will only be used once. And as I get later on into the presentation, I will tell you a story how I saw that happening in an application. You want to entice the user to explore more deeply, and as they move in, you might want to find ways for them to unlock or discover new facets of your application. Finally, retain. Your application should tell a story. Not just a story of the content you're trying to get the user to visit, but you want the user to form a story about how they use the application regularly and over time. Here's a couple applications that we talk about a lot that do attract, delight, and retain pretty well. So attract. Cocktail Flow is an application that was launched almost right after we launched. They did a fantastic job of really creating a beautiful application that embraces the color and social interaction that goes along with having cocktails with friends. What's funny is that maybe a year ago we were telling people in a conference much like this how beautiful we thought Cocktail Flow was and how wonderfully Metro it was, or how they embraced Metro. And shortly thereafter, I guess some designers from Cocktail Flow came up and said, "You think we're Metro? We didn't know." And the funny thing was they had the impression, as did many people at the time, they thought Metro meant you had to look exactly like Microsoft's application or platform. Nope. You can look just like this and be called Metro. In fact, when you get to this screen or the screens like this, each one of these elements come moving in on their own pace. So they've embraced great Metro motion principles, using an innovative motion style that we didn't even put into the platform. So they did a fantastic job creating a beautiful application. Delight. In the United States, there's this fad that's popping up. I don't know if it's happening here, but canteen trucks, these movable trucks where they cook in the back and people come up and they ask for a sandwich or a taco. But they're all over the place. And now you can get sushi out of a truck, and you can get tacos and burritos and all of these crazy things out of trucks. And they have passionate following. There's one in Seattle that is a truck that was adorned to look like a huge pig. It's called Minimus Maximus, and it drives all around town, and people want to know where this truck is all the time, and it's crazy. So what this app does is help you find the trucks wherever they may be, but they also help you find what people are tweeting about those trucks. They use the social networking component of the app to help users figure out where to go, rather than just the vendor broadcasting over a map. Then they also bring in some nice other content. There's a whole TV show about following these taco trucks around, which is pretty funny. But what this application does, it could have just said, "I'm a taco truck finder," which could have just given you a search box. You type in the name of your taco truck and it gives you a result. It could have done that. That would have been pretty good for about a day. But what they did is they gave it more life by bringing in live content from other sources. And that's how this app stands out in the delight phase. And finally, Amazon.com does a great job at making it personal. It's not just a recreation of their home screen when you type in Amazon.com. It actually also shows you the stuff that's recommended for me and the deals that are happening right now. And this content updates too. So in an hour, there'll be something new here. So it retains me because I know that that content is going to be personal to me, and there's going to be something fresh there every time I go in. So now I'm drawn back in on a regular basis. And I'll even talk to you about ways where you can keep the user coming in more and more regularly rather than just updating here or here. You can even push that content to a live tile. If you guys have any questions at all, feel free to interrupt me. You can yell it out or raise your hand. I'm kind of blinded by the lights, so you can interrupt me. But please. Okay. So now I'm going to tell you about some opportunities for innovation. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about pivots and panos, live tiles, and motion. So first, pivots and panoramas. They're two very different controls in my mind, but they're the most confused controls in the whole system. So starting on the left, this is a pivot. This little control right here. And what it does is it seeks to sort or filter or bring in related content. And so in your inbox, if you have inbox set up, you'll be able to see all your email, or if you pivot over once, you'll see your unread email. If you pivot over again, you'll see urgent. It's a really efficient and focused or habitual way to navigate through content. Now, it could also be related content. So if you go into a contact card, you can see the way to contact a friend. You can also see the history of communications that you had with them, or you can see their pictures, or you can see what's happening on their social network walls. That content, it's basically one pivot for each of a varying different type of content. So it's a nice, efficient way to do that. On the right, you have a panorama. This is a panorama. This whole canvas. They're expansive. Look how big that is. They're explorative and dynamic. When you're deciding to use a panorama, what you're trying to say, or the metaphor that you want to keep in your mind, is a magazine cover. Magazine covers are very, very visually dynamic. And what they do is they hint at what's deeper on in the magazine. They do not show you everything that's in the magazine. They just tell you the highlights. So in this case, we give you a sense of your core tasks: play music right away, find your videos, find your podcasts. And then if you pan over a little bit, you can see what's playing now or what you've played in the past. And you can even see that the panorama is capable of promoting new information to you. And that's it. And look how wonderfully paced out it is. Really, really open space. And you can see there's even sort of senses of pages. My battery is dying on this. See, just senses of pages. Do we have a new battery? Anybody? Do you have a battery for this?
There's a second one on the list.
Bigger. Let's see. Ooh, and a green laser. I like that. All right. Okay, so there's a sense of some panels or pages. Now, the next slide is going to show you some examples of ways to make a panorama that is way different from every other thing that we've seen before. So let me just focus again. Look, there's a little bit of a page here. And then there's a double wide page here, or maybe a single wide right here. Right? Then there's a double wide here, and then there's another one here. So very paneled. We call that pacing. We're not forcing a whole bunch of content. The user can kind of move in nice and easy through the system. Okay, what if we did something completely different? Over here on the left, there is no single page or panel in this whole UI. It's pure infographic. What we're showing you here is a concept, never been built. Please, someone build it. It's a concept of a person's personal finance application. And rather than just showing a list of all the ways that I've spent my money on beer or watches or shoes, what they've done is they said, I can make this person's spending patterns beautiful. And I can show you that their spending patterns go down over time, that they spend perhaps some money on coffee and cars. They can compare this month to last month. And it's really just pure layout, beautiful design. It's a pure infographic. And there's no one landing page. If I pan that over 2 pixels, it becomes 2 pixels more interesting. It's always more informative. On the right over here, here's another way that we have another innovative idea. So this idea I was telling you about was a way that there was a client, I was here in Europe, and the client said, I would like an application that enables a user to find a new drink. And all they have to do is pick an ingredient, or pick a bar type, or pick a type of music, and we'll recommend a drink. Or if they shake their phone, we'll give them something random. Or pick a favorite color. I said, oh, that's pretty interesting. But I figured, man, how many times would I use that before I would just order my beer again? It didn't have enough of the attract, engage, retrain model that I was talking to you about before. So I called up the studio, and I said, hey guys, I need to make a user journey around helping users find and try a new drink, but also make it much more social. And so I expressed to them that I wanted some kind of map, but I said, don't build me a map. Just give me a nice infographic that tells me how close my friends are and where the nearest bars are, and let the user navigate in. And then give me some kind of point system that users can track to, so they can come back and see how well they're doing by participating in the promotions of this particular client. And then, yep, whenever the client asks, give them exactly what they asked for. So I did that. I did exactly what they asked for. And then I also, you can see I'm hinting over here that perhaps there's a way that the client could promote some deals. So I tell a much better user journey than simply following what's going on in here. And the innovative piece here is to say, you don't have to always be explicit with your content. You can be implicit, you can be infographic, you can be stylized. And so this is a nice little piece that helped users figure out where their friends are and where the nearest locations for entertainment are, and they can go on about their life and eventually create their own story about the evening just with this application. So pure infographic, kind of a twist on how to show location, all things that are available to you. If you were to go to the design guidelines and look up location, they wouldn't say do this, They wouldn't say do this. They would say, here's how you use a map. You can use a map. You can put a map in a panorama with some exceptions. But this is creative thinking. That comes from the explore portion of the design process. Blink. Okay. Live tiles on start. This is where you can really, really attract users into your application. You can playfully innovate with your brand and your brand style. You can incorporate notifications to make sure that users know that you want to tell them something new. And so here is the typical pattern, this whole slide. You can be real basic with just an icon on the background or a theme color. You can just use text. Or you can bring in some pictures with some text, and so on. That's basic. If you want to take it the next level, you can do it a little bit different. So remember that Metro Bar application I just showed you? You could say, you know what? What if I built an alpha composite layer that had a cutout in the middle that allowed the theme to shine through? And that was my tile. And what would end up happening is that your tile would always express your brand, but it would always incorporate the color of the theme. We don't prevent you from doing this. You can do this in your applications. I think there's only one that's doing it right now. So play with tiles a little bit. You still want to be open and clean, but you can be playful too. You can even do some more. If you wanted, you can create your deep linking tiles, the tiles that go into different parts of your application, and do the same thing. You can have the color come through in your in your text. You can still have that cutout. You can talk to the user about the points that they've earned. You can even put some neat graphics if you want to recommend them something. And again, it's just through alpha composites. And so what you would be delivering is these white tiles with a space for text to be updated, perhaps a space for you to push your notification system up, or a graphic, and that's it. Pretty straightforward. Nothing prevents you from doing this. Some of these things are a little harder to do than others. If you follow the pattern that we do, super easy. If you do this, takes a little bit more time, not too much time. I watched one of my colleagues give a presentation last week, and in an hour and 45 minutes or an hour or so, in front of an audience much like this, she built an app and had moments like this as well. So it's really easy. Granted, she had all her content canned and everything like that. But take the time to explore and give yourself the opportunity to think of really creative ways to present your information, and you can have things like this happening in your application. Okay, let me tell you a little bit about animations and motion. First, motion should be used to reinforce your content, and that's what we do. So reinforce the content, we emphasize the content, and reinforce the user's interaction. So a little bit about the basics. What you have on the right is what we call turnstile. Anytime you tap on something and you're going from one space to the next, that's a turnstile navigation. It's like a door opening. It's to communicate to the user that you're going from one place to the next. In contrast, we have an animation that we use called Continuum. Continuum is meant to be a drill application. When you use it, or when we use it, what we're trying to say is we know that going from this list view to this card view might be somewhat jarring, because you might lose the sense of what you tapped on and where you ended up. So what we do is we take the Dynera read and we have it navigate around. It jumps around. Do it one more time. It jumps around. So that gives a sense of continuum to going from a list level to a card level. And finally, or not finally, we have swivel and slide. And this is just to bring in transient UI to confirm things. And slide is meant to bring in the last layer of your UI, a natural dead end where a user will make a choice and have to hit the back button to get out. Real simple. You can put in your own animations too. The thing that you want to do with your animations is the same thing that we do with our animations. You want to hint towards the interaction and create a sense of physical space. You want to layer on top of the basic animation guidelines and the animation set that we've put into the system. You want to use that animation to illustrate your brand and user journey. And what you don't want is your animation to distract from the content. You want it to focus users on the content. So unlike what's happening on the slide, this slide and all the previous ones, where the animation just kept running and running and running, that becomes distracting and annoying. You want your animation to highlight what's going on and then stop. You want it to make sure that people know where to look. You're not doing an animation just because you know how to do an animation. That becomes distracting and it becomes noisy because the content is the star. Okay, so now we're going to go through really quickly and we're going to apply some of the things we've talked about. So first we're going to talk about building a user journey. We're going to talk about page structure and visuals, differentiation, finally commit and realize. So we might decide to build a golf app. I mentioned it before. The things that we would want to do, perhaps, we might all agree that golfing is a social activity, and therefore we want our application to focus on a shared experience, right? So that when we play golf together, we can keep track and share what's happening if we wanted to. Or even when we go back to a bar or a restaurant and talk about the various golf games that we've played, we can bring them up and show them again, real delightfully. We want to allow the social aspect of golf to flourish. We want capturing and saving relevant stats and details to be easy. And to be easy. Okay, so there, we just went through the define phase. My golf app is going to do this. Then we'd have to explore. We'd have to come up with all the different ways that our golf app can achieve this. And it's in this where you want to think big. Think huge. This is actually a picture of our design studio, and this is not the way we design. This is a canned picture. But the idea is a couple things that are illustrated here. One is that if you have a big whiteboard or huge pieces of paper, that's the best place to explore and have really creative ideas emerge. And so we might think of the idea of taking our phone and sticking it to the end of our golf club and tracking our swing, but we would break our phone. Okay, but that's a big idea. And that might lead to somebody saying, well, you can also track your swing if you have it strapped to your arm or if you have it in your pocket, because the accelerometers are pretty sensitive. So that big idea of taking the phone and attaching it to my club led to a real idea. So all ideas are good. Make sure you have the opportunity to get them out. And as you get them out, eventually you need to figure out, well, where are they going to live in the system? So it's worthwhile to know what do all the other applications do? They have start, they have tiles, they have lists with pivots, or they have panoramas. This is your pattern. So now you're saying, all right, there's patterns in the system that I want to use, and I have these big ideas. Let's see if I can get my big ideas into these patterns. and you'll create some hierarchical maps, IA maps, information architecture maps. And what we're showing here is that you may have way more ideas than you can possibly do. And so what you might do is just say, all right, here are all my ideas, but today I'm only going to design and build this. And that's really cool, because that's the other way to create a user journey. If you create a regular pattern of updating your application, extending that promise, and your app is really good, then users will really look forward to your updates. And so as you move from this to this, you'll start seeing in the ratings and reviews and the blogs about your application that users are really excited to see you extend to this as well. So don't try and do it all at once. Make sure you're basic and simple at the start and very precise, meeting your promise, and then build out from there. So you've decided that you're going to build this, and now you got to figure out, well, how is it going to look? And so you're going to create an information architecture. You're going to develop your information architecture where you can account for every tap. See, this one goes to contact customer service screen. You can see what happens when the user can log in, yes or no. This one's even incomplete. What we would do often in the studio is along every one of these lines, we would say, what animation do we want to occur? And this map will sometimes be 8 feet wide and 4 feet tall. And this is how we express how we want to design our application. And when we go talk to our developer, we lay that out, and he says, all right, I think I got it. Wait a minute, what's this thing over here? I don't know if I can do that. I'll get back to you. And then if he can't, he'll come back to us and say, I can't do that, but I can do this, this, and this. And at that point, you can say, all right, well, I got to make a change. This thing's got to change. How much easier is it to change this, which is just a Visio diagram, versus code, fixing bugs in a code? It's way easier to change this. In fact, if you just did it on pen and paper, you'd just re-sketch it and hand them the new piece of paper to say, put that there. So again, this is another reason why you want to design up front. Now, you're going to have a visual designer who's working either, he might be the same person or she might be the same person. But if you have two, your visual designer might be starting to say, all right, here's what I think it's going to start to look like. And everybody can comment about, yeah, I get it. That's a list view. All right. Oh, there's going to be a little map. That's cool. Application bar. I know that control. Good spacing. All right. And then that'll eventually develop into real UI. And every time you produce another visual artifact, you get the opportunity for commentary and refinement. Your application and that whole process will become better as a result. If you jump straight to this, again, you're fixing all your bugs in code. If you work to this point, then you'll fix your bugs through a conversation. That's another thing you can remember. Design, beautiful design, is a conversation. It's a dialogue between a designer and users, a designer and a developer. If you think of design that way, you'll always have a great app. If you think of design as a product, if you think of it as a noun, then you may miss it. And so through a conversation, we're able to get here. And we're able to say, all right, I can find my friends. There's the social aspect. I have group order. Yep, I can enter my data easily. Here's the scorecard. There it is again. I can find new places to play. All of those are some of our principles that we outlined early on. And finally, what you might want to do is add your panorama. And here again, look how open it is. There's a page here, and then we have a double wide right here. And so we get this concept of pace. We're not shoving whole bunches of information in at the user all at once. We're just letting them discover things so you can see where they played last and see what their scores are. It's enabling that sharing and social component. We have the ability to bring in web articles or perhaps even buy new content, new equipment. So You've designed your application, and now you design your panorama. This is something that I often tell people. If you've never built a Windows Phone application, you're trying to figure out how to build a panorama, build the application first, then build your panorama on top. You might do that 2-3 times. Then you'll start to say, okay, I think I understand how I want panoramas to be used, and you'll start to bake that into your natural design process. Now, I said something that I'll even go back on. I mentioned earlier that panorama is just a canvas, and you can put anything you want in here. And then I just said that you can put it on top. In truth, you can put a panorama wherever you want. If you look at the Twitter application starts with a collection of pivots. And then every time you do a search, say you do a search for Sesame Street, and you hit save, when you open up that search again, you'll see the Sesame Street feed come up in a panorama. That's pretty nice. So you can use panoramas, much like any other control, wherever you want them in the system, as long as you are cognizant of their impact on hierarchy and the pacing you want to achieve in your application. Okay, so now we're at the end. This is it. You've got all of your design deliverables. You want to validate all of those design deliverables against your principles. It's now when you write code and then verify it on the device. One thing that we often see people do is they write their code, it appears on the emulator, they go, okay, click, 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 everything seems to be working, write their code, and then they port it to the device, and they realized that every single touch target was only hittable with their mouse, with their little pointer. They didn't bring it to their device to realize I can't or can touch this with my finger. So it's super important to constantly move your code to the device, and it's really easy to do. You just deploy your Zap to the phone or deploy it to your emulator. It's the same task. The other thing that we find that people don't do enough is change the theme. We have a dark and light, and we have a whole bunch of accent colors. Make sure that when you're validating your code works in dark and light theme and all the accent colors. That way, nothing goes away. So we have seen in the past where someone built an application, it looks great, and then they flip to dark theme, and suddenly the white turns to black, and the text color didn't change, and all they have is a black screen. So make sure you validate all of these little moments of delight that we've put into the system against your application, and it will look great. Then move to bug fixing. Because you planned up front, the bug fixing will be easier on the order of if you spent 3 months from the beginning of your design phase all the way to the point where you're at your bug fixing and you're near the end, so 3 months from end to end, you're looking at about a week and a half of bug fixing, as opposed to skipping that and having a month to a month and a half. This is a pattern I've seen over and over again. And then final polish. And guess what? Your app is done. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Keep doing it. Apply your designs to the new features that we'll keep talking about in the future and now. And that's it. Thank you very much. I'm supposed to do that. Yeah. Are there any questions? No questions. I got a question once, last week in fact. I talked about the fact that you design first and then you move to development. And someone came up to me and said, but what if I am using the agile development process? That sounds like you're talking about waterfall development process. And the point I want to make here is I am not specifying how you code. All I'm saying is make sure you understand your goal before you move into your development process. Design is about understanding and clarifying what you're trying to build. So by doing that up front, you can organize your sprints or you can organize a waterfall in any way you want. No? No? Still no questions? Okay, well then thank you very much. I really enjoyed you guys.